Hello, I'm Chris Berrow with the BBC News. Stock markets in the United States have ended their worst week since 2020 as Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs continue to cause turmoil on global markets. There was also sharp falls across Asia and Europe. Mr. Trump has again insisted that taxes on goods entering the US will supercharge the American economy. Erin Delmore is in New York.
For the S&P 500, over the last 2 days alone, we're seeing more than a 10% decline. For the Dow, we're seeing a decline of more than 2,200 points today. For the NASDAQ, more than 20% below a recent December high. President Trump is making a bet that his protectionist policies here are going to either lead other countries to negotiate their own tariff rates or lure American companies to reshore their production and their supply operations back to the U.S., But we are seeing in real time countries grappling with how to respond to President Trump, and that anxiety and those maneuvers are really making investors nervous.
Ukraine says a Russian missile strike on Volodymyr Zelensky's hometown of Kryvyi Rih hit a residential area, killing 18 civilians. At least 6 of the victims are reportedly children. President Zelensky posted photos of bodies near a playground and damaged apartment blocks. Here's James Waterhouse.
President Zelensky has said this demonstrates that Russia is more interested in war than it is in peace. And we're seeing America starting to lose its patience, it seems, with Moscow over its repeated and ongoing efforts to bring some kind of ceasefire to this war. And President Zelensky will be hoping that what we have seen in Kryvyi Rih just might nudge Donald Trump towards his most recent threat of imposing further sanctions on Russia.
A US court has ordered the energy firm Chevron to pay more than $700 million to repair damage to coastal wetlands in Louisiana. A jury found that Texaco, which was acquired by Chevron more than 20 years ago, had breached the state's environmental guidelines. Ella Bicknell reports.
For more than a decade, Plaquemines Parish has been taking legal action against some of America's largest oil companies for their role in Louisiana's rapid coastal erosion. The case was the first to reach trial. The jury found Texaco had long ignored its obligations to clean up areas affected by its drilling and dredging. It also found the firm had dumped billions of litres of contaminated wastewater. Texaco's parent company, Chevron, has called the decision unjust and says it will appeal.
An American judge has ruled that a man who was wrongly deported to El Salvador must be returned to the United States by Monday. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was among more than 200 people taken to a Salvadoran prison last month. US immigration officials have blamed an administrative error for Mr. Abrego Garcia's deportation, who had protected legal status. World news from the BBC. Syria's government has criticised a report by Amnesty International into sectarian killings last month. The rights group found that massacres in the coastal provinces of Latakia and Tartus could constitute war crimes. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said more than 1,700 people were killed by security forces and allied groups. The government says the violence began when armed supporters of the ousted president, Bashar al-Assad, attacked soldiers. An English woman has received compensation from the National Health Service after finding out she was swapped at birth in the 1950s. Her case only came to light after she took a home DNA test to research her family history. Jim Reid has the details.
This is now the second case of its type to be uncovered by the BBC. The woman involved took a DNA test almost a decade ago and was surprised after it suggested a strong Irish heritage. Her DNA was then stored in a commercial database. 6 years later, she was contacted by a stranger whose data matched hers so closely he could only be her genetic sibling. She later found out she was born on the same day, in the same hospital as one of his sisters. The NHS trust involved has now paid compensation and apologised after accepting they must have been swapped at birth.
The Malian singer Amadou Bagayoko, who sold millions of albums worldwide with his wife Mariam, has died at the age of 70. Known as the blind couple from Mali, Amadou and Mariam began touring together in the 1980s, initially to raise awareness for people living with blindness and disabilities. The Russian ice hockey player Alex Ovechkin has become the NHL's joint highest ever goal scorer. The Washington Capitals star is now tied with Wayne Gretzky, whose record has stood for 26 years. Ovechkin was mobbed by his teammates when he reached the feet on Friday night. It was his 894th goal in the league. BBC News.